Today is Thursday, December 15th, 2011. I'm Emanuel, and this is CMBG News. America's war in Iraq is officially over after 8 long years. The end of the war is being marked today with the U.S. flag being lowered in the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. All U.S. troops leave the Middle Eastern nation by the end of the year, and Iraq will look after its own security. America invaded Iraq because its leader said Saddam Hussein was supporting terrorists and developing very powerful weapons, though these were never found. Hussein was put on trial by the new Iraqi government and executed in 2006 for crimes against humanity. President Obama praised what he called the military's extraordinary achievement. Over the course of the 8-year war, the lives of 4,500 U.S. troops were lost. On behalf of CMBG News, welcome home, troops. 7 miners were safely removed from an underground mine in northern Idaho after they were injured by a rock burst while working more than a mile deep. The miners were working about 5,900 feet underground when they were injured about 7:40 p.m. by a rock burst, which is an explosion of rock caused by excessive pressure from the weight of the ground above. They were working in the Lucky Friday, one of the nation's deepest underground mines. Initial reports indicated that the miners could be trapped, but that wasn't the case, said Hecla Mining Company spokeswoman Melanie Hennessy. Everyone in the mine has been accounted for, and the mine is currently closed, she said. The Federal Mine Safety and Health Administration will investigate the incident, which comes after 2 Lucky Friday miners died in separate instances at the mine this year. Bootleg liquor in eastern India leads to the death of over 100 people. A tainted batch of bootleg liquor killed 102 people and sent dozens more to the hospital in villages outside the eastern India city of Kolkata, officials said. Day laborers and other poor workers began falling ill late Tuesday after drinking the brew that was laced with the toxic methanol around the village of Sangrampur, about 20 miles south of Kolkata. It's a very sad thing that this has happened. Why don't the police stop this? I cannot understand. What connection do they have? Said Anwar Hassan Mullah, who brought 6 people from his village to the hospital. All of them died, Mullah told NDTV news channel. Police arrested 4 people in connection with making and distributing the toxic booze. Republicans introduced a $915 billion spending bill in the House of Representatives early on Thursday in an attempt to force Democrats to finalize legislation that would keep the U.S. government operating beyond the weekend. Republican and Democratic lawmakers are fighting over how to extend an expiring payroll tax cut for 160 million Americans, and each side is trying to use the spending bill as a bargaining chip. The bill, which would provide funds for crucial government functions such as patrolling the U.S. borders, has little chance of passing the Democratic-controlled Senate unless Democrats agree that the bill is complete. Republicans control the House. Lawmakers in charge of government spending had reached a tentative agreement on the spending bill on Monday, but at the White House request, Senate Democrats have held back in order to force Republicans to stay in town ahead of New Year holidays to reach an agreement on the payroll tax cut and unemployment benefits. Facebook's new timeline profile began rolling out to users in several countries on Wednesday night. By typing the word timeline in the Facebook search bar, you will discover a result that reads Introducing Timeline, which leads to a page explaining the new format and providing an option to upgrade. Here is a video that will give you an idea of the Facebook timeline experience.
Come on, baby. You did it.
here at CMBG want to know what you think of the timeline upgrade option. Share your thoughts on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Cook Morton Broadcasting. More than 2.5 million adults younger than 26 have stayed on their parents' health insurance plans because of a provision in last year's health care. This is yet another example of how the health care law is making a huge difference in the lives of America's families, said Ethan Rome of the advocacy group Healthcare for America Now. Federal officials fully credited the gains to the Affordable Care Act, legislation championed by President Barack Obama that took effect last year and is deemed the biggest overhaul of the U.S. healthcare system in nearly 50 years. The law aims broadly to eventually provide medical insurance to more than 30 million uninsured Americans, and in September last year allowed young adults to stay on their parents' private insurance plans through age 26. The provision is perhaps the single most popular element of the highly divisive law, and the announcement on Wednesday elicited little reaction from congressional Republicans. Young adults were twice as likely to go without insurance. They were taking real risks, Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius told reporters. Today, 2.5 million more young Americans are no longer living with that fear. Mothers and fathers can breathe a little easier. TLC's All-American Muslim is sending advertisers packing. The online travel search company Kayak says it will stop advertising on TLC's All-American Muslim not because of pressure from conservatives, but in the words of Kayak's chief marketing officer, because the show sucked. Robert Burge, chief marketing officer for travel website Kayak, said his company received angry emails about its decision to advertise on the show, which prompted him to look into it. He didn't like what he saw, he said, and it had nothing to do with propaganda or pressure from outside groups. Hardware chain Lowe's has taken criticism from pulling its ads from the series after the conservative evangelical group Florida Family Association called on advertisers to stop supporting the series. The FFA claims the show is propaganda clearly designed to counter legitimate and present-day concerns about many Muslims. All-American Muslim airs Sundays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on TLC. Federal officials report a yearly survey suggests cigarette and alcohol use by 8th, 10th, and 12th graders are at their lowest point in more than 25 years. However, abuse of other tobacco products, marijuana, and prescription drugs remains an issue. The Monitoring the Future survey has been administered since 1975 and is one of the three major surveys sponsored by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that provide data on substance use among youth. Researchers say that even though some areas have improved, survey responses suggest more teens continue to abuse marijuana than cigarettes, and alcohol is still the drug of choice among all three age groups queried. Another study finds drivers using hands-free phones can't tune out conversations to focus on the road. Drivers get distracted during cell phone conversations, even when using hands-free phones, researchers said. It's also part of the reason why the National Transportation Safety Board went ahead this week with a recommendation it knows a lot of drivers won't like, that states ban hands-free as well as handheld cell phone use while driving. It's not where your hands are, but it's where your mind is that counts, NTSB Chairman Deborah Hersman told reporters. But many ask, what's next? No passengers? No kids? No tuning the radio? Maybe NTSB will ban driving altogether. At this point, what's missing is hard evidence that accidents are increasing because of cell phone use. One reason is that U.S. privacy laws have made it difficult for researchers to study whether cell phones were in use in accidents in the U.S. The two large studies that have been done in Canada and Australia found drivers were 4 times more likely to have a crash if talking on a cell phone. It didn't matter whether the cell phone was hands-free or handheld. Well, you're now up to date here on CMBG News. We'll be right back after this short break. And welcome back to CMBG News. I'm Corey Emanuel. The Postal Service has delayed cutbacks until May. The U.S. Postal Service agreed Tuesday to delay the closing of 252 mail processing centers and 3,700 local post offices until mid-May. In a statement, the ailing agency said it would hold off on closings by several weeks to give Congress more time to pass legislation that would give it more authority and liquidity to fight off bankruptcy. The Postal Service, which is expected to default Friday on a $5.5 billion payment to the Treasury, is forecast to lose a record $14.1 billion next year. Last week, the Postal Service said it was moving forward on cutbacks nationally. It had planned to begin closing processing centers as early as April and shutter some post offices early next year. In all, about 100,000 postal employees could be cut as a result of the various closures, resulting in savings of up to $6.5 billion a year. The Postal Service, an independent agency of the government, does not receive tax money, but it is subject to congressional control on major aspects of its operations. Separate bills that have passed House and Senate committees would give the Postal Service more authority to reduce delivery to 5 days a week, raise stamp prices, and reduce health care and other labor costs. In an interview with Fox News, Defense Secretary Leon Panetta said the stealth drone campaign along the Iran-Afghanistan border will absolutely continue despite the loss of a valuable and sophisticated drone to Iran. The mysterious loss of the RQ-170 Sentinel drone has revealed not only that the U.S. was spying on Iran, but also that the program was being run from Shindad Air Base in western Afghanistan. According to Fox News, Panetta would not comment directly on what the drone was doing over Iran, but said the U.S. military had no plans to halt the drone operation out of western Afghanistan. Those operations have to be protected in order to do the job and the mission that they're involved with, he said. When asked if he would continue those missions as they have been conducted out of Afghanistan, he responded with one word: absolutely. Panetta would not speculate about whether the Sentinel drone had failed by a cyber attack or a high-tech jamming device. President Obama said on Monday he would not comment on the situation beyond saying the U.S. has asked the Iranians to give it back. We will see how the Iranians respond, he said. Panetta would travel later this week to Baghdad for the ceremony to mark the end of the U.S. war in Iraq. The Secretary did not agree with the assessment of Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki in Washington on Monday, suggesting Iranian interference in Iraq would disappear once all U.S. troops have gone home. Egyptians headed to the polls yesterday for a critical round of voting to shape the new parliament. The second round in the country's three-stage election process, Wednesday's vote is vital because it includes the Gaza, Luxor, Aswan, and Ismailia regions, which have historically favored conservative Islamic candidates. Egypt's Islamic claimed victory in the first round of elections in other parts of the country last week. The early results have triggered tensions between leaders of the Islamic parties and the military council that is running Egypt until a new government is formed. According to media reports, General Mukhtar al-Mullah, a high-ranking military official, said the military would increase its role in the drafting of Egypt's constitution. The deputy director of the Muslim Brotherhood's party said it will pull out participating in a government advisory board. The results of Wednesday's elections will help indicate whether the tensions are impacting votes and will give an indication of how much strength minority parties are likely to have in parliament. An earthquake measuring 7.1 magnitude hit Papua New Guinea on Wednesday afternoon, the United States Geological Survey said. The tremor struck at a depth of 75 miles, about 137 miles north-northwest of the capital Port Moresby at 3:05 p.m. local time. Witnesses in Port Moresby told AFP that people came running out of buildings, power lines swayed, and parked cars rocked. It was pretty strong. Everybody felt it. I was sitting in my car when it hit, and it was rocking, an AFP reporter said. According to Geoscience Australia, the tremor was not expected to create a tsunami. Seismologist Clive Collins said the quake could cause other problems like landslides for the nearest largest town. Wai'u, about 12 miles from the epicenter, and Lae, 55 miles away. Papua New Guinea is regularly hit by earthquakes due to its proximity to the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, a hotspot for seismic activity due to friction between tectonic plates. A tech giant puts its money where its mouth is to end slavery. Google is donating $11.5 million to organizations fighting to end the slavery of 27 million people around the world. It is believed to be the largest corporate grant ever devoted to the intervention and rescue of people being held, forced to work, or provide sex against their will. Google made the announcement Wednesday as part of its $40 million end-of-year charitable donations. In total, the tech company donated more than $100 million in 2011. Anti-slavery organizations International Justice Mission, the Polaris Project, and Slavery Footprint will receive the bulk of the latest grant. Much of their work will be focused on helping people being forced to work against their will or trafficked in India, as well as raising awareness about the issue here in the U.S. President Barack Obama's State of the Union address is set for January 24th. As tradition requires, House Speaker John Boehner invited the president to speak to a joint session of Congress. The White House accepted. Boehner says a letter to Obama that Republicans welcome the opportunity to hear your new ideas for working with Congress. There's much work to be done on Capitol Hill before the president's speech. Obama and congressional Republicans right now are struggling to wrap up final business on spending bills and on an extension of a payroll tax cut. Boehner says that as Congress and the White House try to accomplish all that, we must also look ahead for new opportunities to put solutions before politics. Well, you're now up to date here on CMBG News. We'll be right back after these brief messages.